Good evening, everybody.
Kavod how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Okay. Okay. So we're starting with Yud. It says here, כתב הרשב"א, שאלת מי שאינו שותה יין כל השנה כולה, מפני שמזיקו, right? So we're talking about somebody asked him a question. Somebody who doesn't drink wine all year round. Why? Because it's harmful to him. Or doesn't like it. מהו שיעשה כל הסדר על הפת? So the question is, can he, skip that on the in the Seder and the Haggadah and just eat bread instead? So that's the question that they asked him. So he answers תשובה, מסתברא שכל שיש לו יין צריך לדחוק עצמו ולעשות כרבי יהודה בעילי, דלא הווה שתה חמריו. So he says, right, that the proper thing to do is that even though you don't drink all year round, for whatever reason it may be, you should try to push yourself to drink, for the Passover night. So he brings the example of this rabbi from the Talmud, right? So what does it say? That he didn't drink wine. So what would he do? He would drink arba kasot. Right? So in other words, even though he didn't drink wine all year round, but when it came to the Passover, he did drink the 4 cups in order to do the mitzvah. So in other words, he had a problem. It seems like, it was harmful to him, whatever, to drink wine. Nevertheless, he pushed himself. Can you imagine? Okay, so then he brings something else here. It says the name Rabbeinu Yonah. It says in Yerushalmi, Rabbi Yonah. Right, no, it's not Rabbeinu Yonah, it's Rabbi Yonah. Different guy, right? So anyway, it says there, Shate arba kase belelia de pischa v'chazik reshe ad atzarta. So, right, so it seems like, these people were like very sensitive to wine. They used to get like a big headache or whatever. Used to give them a nice big headache, like for a long time, quite a long time. Nevertheless, they pushed themselves to drink wine on the night of Passover in order to do the mitzvah. So he says, so we have two different rabbis, right? One in the Bavli, one in the Yerushalmi. They both say the same thing, right? That not say the same thing, they both did the same thing, which is to push themselves to drink wine, even though it was harmful to them.
Kavod Rabbeinu Yonah is from Yerushalmi.
Right, so there's Rabbeinu Yonah, who's from the Rishonim.
Rishonim. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think he was in Spain. Rabbeinu Yonah, and this Rabbi Yonah was from the Talmud. It's way before, about 1,000 years before, right? Something like that.
And
So,
the rabbi who they're referring her here to in Talmud Balbi is who?
Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai, right? That's Rabbi Yehuda from the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda from the Mishnah. His name is Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai.
Baliai?
Bar Ilai.
Bar Eli. Oh, okay, okay.
Right.
Thank
Yes.
you.
God bless. Yeah, he's buried in Eretz Israel. If you go to Eretz Israel, and you take a tour of the north, a lot of these big rabbis are buried there, in the Galilee, in the north. And he is definitely there, right there off the highway. You can catch him, right? Stop on the highway, you get off, and you're right there. So you can visit him, in his final resting place, right? Until Tchiat HaMetim. Yeah, so it was that's Rabbi Yehuda. So yeah, that's the story there. So let's see the Shulchan Aruch. Yeah, so it says in Shulchan Aruch like this, right? Misha eno shote yain. A person who doesn't drink wine, as we said, mipnei Hashem maziko, because it harms him, right? Whatever. Or no, doesn't like it, whatever, right? One or the other. Either it harms him or he doesn't like it. Tzarich le'edchok atzmo lishtot. So he says he should push himself, right? I mean, you don't have to kill yourself. You know what I mean? We're not talking about that. But if it does give you some, discomfort, you should try to push it. That's what we're trying to say, right? Obviously, you shouldn't die for it, right? Not, I'm not talking about that. Okay, so that's the story, right? So you see from there that this mitzvah, is something that the rabbis considered to be very, very important, right? The four cups on Passover. So a person really should try to, to do the mitzvah properly. As I told you, my rabbi Al Bashar Maran, he used to drink grape juice, and that's fine. You can do that, if you don't like alcohol, you know, no problem with grape juice. Because according to halakha, grape juice is also wine. You know? So that's fine. Okay, good. So let's go on a little bit.
Kabbalah, the grape juice does not go through the fermentation process, right? That creates the alcohol, correct?
Yeah, it's just like, what happens is that, when you squeezed out the grapes,
Mhm.
you have to let them sit in a barrel for a while, and they start to ferment, right?
Yes, and they start to turning and so on.
Right. So what happens is that, the juice, hasn't really fermented. They just like put it straight into the bottle, you know?
Okay,
But it's still called wine, according to halakha.
because of the
So,
type of grape.
no, it has nothing to do with, you could use any grape.
Okay, so it has not gone through the fermentation process. I'm just
No,
trying to
not at
find
all, but it's still called
the
wine.
grape. Okay, okay, thank you.
Like it says in the Talmud, right? In Masechet Shabbat, it says there, if you don't have, wine to make kiddush for Shabbat, so what do? Take a cluster of grapes, right, and squeeze it before Shabbat, and you can drink that,
Oh, okay,
right? So you have an instant wine, right, on demand. Just squeeze out the cluster of grapes, and you're good.
thank you.
Yeah. So so that's called new wine, right? Then we have also older wine, right, which sat for a while, as we said, right? They're all called wine, these things. Uh, by the way, there are some rabbis who say that it's better to use alcoholic wine, because it's more like, freedom, whatever. But the truth is that in the Talmud, there's no source for that. There's no there's really no substantiation for that theory. It's his own theory, but whatever. So whatever, it is what it is. So if you like alcoholic wine, it's better to use that. If you can handle it. But if it's hard for you, to use grape juice. You know,
Okay, thank you.
especially for women. Women. Drinking 4 cups of wine, can be quite taxing on them. You know what I mean?
I don't like to drink wine, so I use grape juice.
Yeah, great, fantastic, no problem.
But at one point in time, I had to learn about wines. So
Yeah,
thank you.
right. There's the secular definition of what wine is, and there's a Torah definition. Not the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
Not the same thing.
I
Okay,
think
there
it's
you
a
go.
different process
Yeah,
altogether.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So whatever. Okay. So anyway, right, that's the story there. So let's go on to the next one, Yud Aleph. So it says here, Tur says, "Veitat Yerushalmi," right? It's written in Yerushalmi, "Shemitzvah lachazer achar yain adom," right? So the mitzvah is to use red wine. So there are some people who like white wine, right? Like Chardonnay or whatever, or right, Muscat, whatever, all that stuff. But for Passover, don't bring that stuff. Right? Better to use red wine if you can. Also, for Kiddush as well, on Shabbat, better to use red wine. There's a little bit of machloket about that, by the way. But we'll discuss that, Bezat Hashem, in its time, right? Whatever. So says regarding that Bet Yosef, Pek Gimel de Shekalim. It's brought down on Talmud, right? In Shekalim, וכבר כתבתי בסימן Ein Resh Bet. So it's I already wrote in this chapter, right, which is talking about Shabbat. Shadat Ramban. So according to Ramban, אפילו בדיעבד, אם קידש ביין לבן, לא יצא. So according to Ramban, can you imagine if you use white wine, you didn't fulfill your obligation at all. So we don't paskin like that, but that's what the Ramban holds. So better not to use white wine, if it's possible. For Kiddush anyway, right? For Kiddush, for 4 cups. You can save that for dessert, maybe, right? If you want to have some dessert with white wine, that's fine, whatever, to enjoy, whatever. But not for kiddush, not for 4 cups. But if you have nothing else, you got only white wine, you can use it. No, no problem. We're gonna see, right? I don't know if it's written here, but it's written in the laws of Shabbat. And the Ashkenazim are more lenient about this a little bit, right? They use white wine, if it's good quality wine, like if it's better than the red. So they'd say, better to use good quality white wine than to use, mediocre red wine. But according to the Shulchan Aruch, right, better to use red wine, in general, right, as a general rule. Okay, so why is it better to use red wine? Because they say, that it's usually better quality. It's better, the red grapes make a better wine, as a general rule. So okay, interesting. So אבל אין כן דת רבנו, but it says the Torah doesn't hold that way, like the Ramban, right? אלא לכתחילה נמי מקדשים בו. So right, the Torah holds you can use white wine, right? even לכתחילה, שהרי אחד מארבע כוסות הוא כוס של קידוש, because one of them is קידוש, right? Those 4 cups. וכמה שאם הלבן משובח מן האדום, that's what the Torah says, right? Like it says in Ramah, that if the white wine is better than the red wine, right? הוא מקודם, so then it's better to use the white wine. So in other words, let's say you have like, cheap, Kiddush wine, right? Or red wine, Manischewitz, I mean, cheap stuff, right? Not the best stuff in the world. right? It could be they have good stuff too. I don't know. I haven't drank Manischewitz in about 40 years or so. What is it?
It's still
So
not.
I'm sorry.
It's still not good.
Well, you're a connoisseur, so I mean,
No, it's too sweet. It's not a good
uh,
wine.
what about for the average, the average Joe, right? Who's
That's like
not
a
such a
dessert
connoisseur.
wine.
It's
I'm
still
Yeah,
too.
sorry.
that's like a dessert wine. The
Yeah,
way how.
whatever. It's a kiddush wine. It's a kiddush. They call it kiddush wine.
Mm.
You need to
Whatever.
dilute. It needs to be diluted not for the alcohol, but for the sugar content.
Yeah, dessert wine.
Yeah.
That's why I
Well,
said
the
dessert.
thing is that what do you call it? They also have kedem. Kedem wine. They have Manischewitz and Kedem. Like these are the two top companies, right, for the kiddush wines. So the truth
Magen
is,
David.
somebody. I'll tell you something interesting. Somebody bought me, for Purim, some Kedem wine, which is like red wine. It's I forget the name of it, whatever it's called, right? Anyway, so this Shabbat, this past Shabbat, I had some. Actually, I enjoyed it. I have to tell you, I thought it was pretty good.
No, no,
It's
not.
not for you, Shoshana. It's not for you.
I will fix you when I get there. I will fix. We'll
It's not for
reintroduce
you.
you to good wine.
You know what I mean? But the
You
truth is
forgot.
that, like at my age, I'm getting older, getting over the hill already. So I can go now for the weaker stuff. Like whatever. I used to when I was younger, I used to like the stronger stuff, the dry wines. I was more into that stuff. But now I can go for something like semi-sweet. But that's not the issue. The issue that it has to be good stuff. Like good quality. That shouldn't give you a headache. I mean, good quality wine. But right anyway, so the point is, I actually liked it. I thought it was pretty good. But it's not for you, that's for sure. Right? It's not your style. But it's not really bad at all. Like the Manischewitz, that I used to drink, when I was a kid. Sometimes people would bring it. That stuff was really, like it tasted like, it was way, way too sweet. Like just, it was impossible. Like really, and not really very good quality either. Whatever. Anyway, right. The point is that usually the red wine is better as a general rule. So that's why usually we prefer that. But according to the Ramah, right, and the Tur also here, same thing, right? That if the white wine is better, so meaning what? If you have like say Chardonnay, right? Chardonnay is good white wine, good quality stuff, right? Especially if it's a good company. So if you take Chardonnay, you know, uh, according to the Ramah, it's better than having Manischewitz, red wine. Right? That's the idea. But according to Maran, the Shulchan Aruch, it's always better to have red. You know, that's the difference, right, between the Ashkenazim and Sephardim regarding this issue. Okay, very good. So, right, that's the story. So he goes on here in the Bet Yosef. כדי וכמה ראשים הלבן משובח מן האדום הוא קודם, right? So he says that, okay, וכך כתב הרוקח, so the רוקח also says this, like the tour, וכבר כתבתי בסימן הנזכר שדעת הריף והרמב"ם והראש דלא כרמב"ן. So he says, right, that also another thing is that the Rif and the Rambam and the Rosh don't hold like the Ramban. So what does that mean? The Ramban, as we just mentioned, holds that even bediavad you can't use white wine, right? You didn't fulfill your obligation with them. But these rabbis don't agree with them, don't agree with the Ramban. So therefore, right, as we said, if you don't have red wine, you can use white wine. Yes, absolutely. Right? But better to get red, as we said, whatever, right? Everybody agrees with that. Better to get red if it's good quality stuff. Manischewitz, I'm not so sure. Not so sure about that. Okay. Very good. Okay, so we're done with this. Let's go to Shulchan Aruch. So it says here, mitzvah lachazor achar yain adom, right? So it says the Shulchan Aruch, right? That it's a mitzvah to get red wine, as we said, right? um, and then in the parentheses, right, he brings the opinion of the Tur, which is also in the Ramah in Laws of Shabbat. Im en alavan meshubach yoter mimen, right? Unless the white wine is more, it's better quality, right? So that's exactly what we just said, right? Pretty much, it's a summary of what we just mentioned.
So what's their opinion on the blush wine?
Oh, the blush. Oh, that's like a hybrid model, I guess, right? You might call right? Well, the truth is that if it's really, really blush, right? Probably in halakha, that would be considered to be like a white wine. You know what I mean? So the red is like when it's really red.
But would it count like if you don't have red, if you don't have a good quality red, would the blush be better than a white?
I think the redder it is, the better it is. The redder, the better, as they say. Right? And I'm not saying that just according to halakha. I think it's also in reality, it's like that. The red wines tend to be better, in general, right? Okay, it's interesting, right? Whatever. There's different grades of red. Like there's also rosé, which is a little bit more red than the blush, right? And then you have the muscat, which is a little bit more red than the rosé. And then you have, the real, heavy duty wines, Cabernet, Merlot, right, which are really, heavy duty stuff, and everything in between, right? Whatever, whatever's in between there. Okay, so that's the story, right? But the truth is, that you got to use your, intellect to know. In other words, which wine is good. You have to know what you're buying. Interesting, by the way, in Israel, most of the wines over there in Israel are Israeli wines. And it's like a minority is from outside, right? And why do I say that? Because the truth is, the Israeli wines are very, very good, and also, the prices over there in Israel are, a little bit cheaper, and also, what do you call it? It tends to be sweeter. Like in other words, it has a sweeter texture to it. So I'm not talking about like really sweet, like Manischewitz, but it's like more, it's like more balanced kind of wine, like not too bitter, not too right, not too dry. So yeah, they have some good stuff there, So yeah, it's just I enjoy drinking over there a little bit more because of that. Whatever, but it is what it is. Yeah.
Is it more fresh, because of the heat, the wine, perhaps?
You know what it is?
Meaning the,
Eretz Israel is famous for, having like very sweet fruits.
uh,
Everything over there grows sweeter, That's the way it is.
It has to do with the soil, I believe.
It's from Hashem, man. It's a godly thing, It's from God. What can I tell you? I don't know what to say, right? By the way, over there in Israel, not only the fruits are sweeter, but also the vegetables are sweeter as well. So when you go to Israel and you taste like things like, fruits, for instance, let's say, for instance, like the classic thing is like a lemon, right? You know what an American lemon tastes like, right? But Israeli lemons are much sweeter and it's much better. I mean, I have to tell you, it's you can't compare. So when you go there, you taste the lemon, you say, "Wow, this is so sweet! Oh my God, can't imagine." Like it's never had a lemon like that in your life. And also like the vegetables, like the carrots, and the lettuce over there is also much sweeter. It's a different ball game. It's a different thing altogether.
If I understand correctly, it has to do with the way they turn the crops. Most places they'll use the crops year after year.
It's written in the Talmud, that Eretz Israel is known for its sweet fruits. You know what I mean? It's written and also in the Torah.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying I
Yeah.
think that it has a lot to do with the way they also the way we, tend to the land. halachically.
I don't know. I don't know about that, but it's something like, it's blessed. Let's put it this way, right? And by the way, you should know that not only, it's blessed now, but in the times that when the temple was standing, it was much, much better. So what we have now is just a little fraction of what we had then. So, because the blessing comes from when the temple is built. So when the temple is built, all the fruits taste better. That's the way it is. So these things are from Hashem, what can you do? And also, by the way, the fruits over there, like the summer fruits are like incredibly sweet, if you get good quality stuff. You'll never taste anything like this over here in America. A different thing altogether. Also, the watermelons, there's no end to it, right? I don't want to get you hungry now tonight. But it's a different ball game there. So yeah, that's the way it goes. So yeah, I mean, I think it's also a mitzvah to buy Israeli products, to support the economy there as well. So if a person, can do that to buy more Israeli products, definitely a big mitzvah to do that, so that the economy should survive there. Okay, very good. So right, that's the story. Let's go. We have one more here, I think, in this chapter. Let's go to Yud Bet. This is also important to know. Right, these are also, by the way, written in laws of Shabbat. Sort of like a cross reference over here, right? From there to here, regarding these issues, because it's the same, because also on Passover you have like Kiddush. It's one of the four cups, so it's the same rules, as you have for Shabbat. Same thing. So it says here like this, right? Yeah, I guess we should see this in a tour inside. Right. So it says, behind Mevushal, it says, right, what about cooked wine, right? So today we call that pasteurized, right? Pasteurized wine. Katav Rav Hai. So it says Rav Hai, she'en yotzin bo, right? You can't fool your obligation, he says, with pasteurized wine, right? Which means, they bring it to a boil, right? Or something like that, right?
Just like Meshuval.
Mevushal, right? Mevushal, yes. In Hebrew, mevushal means cooked, right? So that's the story. Right? So he says, look, can you imagine that on cooked wine, pasteurized wine, the bracha is shakol, not Borei Priya Giffen. Why is that, by the way? You guys know why that is?
It can
Because,
be
yeah,
handled by
go ahead.
Goyim.
I'm sorry?
It can be handled by a Goyim.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, what you're saying is correct. But why is the bracha shakol?
It loses the original appearance or color.
It loses the quality, the taste. It gets lost there. So therefore, right, he says it's like inferior wine, so it's like drinking orange juice. You make shakol. You get my point? So that's what he's saying, right? Rabbi Gaon. But we don't pass it like that, but that's one opinion. Brachin alav shakol. Because the truth is, like, most of the wines that we buy today are pasteurized. I'm talking about the kosher wines, right? I don't know what the non-kosher, what's going on with them. I'm not really experienced with that. But the kosher wines, like 90% of them are pasteurized nowadays. And they have a way, by the way, of doing it nowadays, which doesn't ruin the flavor so much, what they do is, like, they don't bring it to a full boil. They do, like, like almost to a boil, a little bit lower. And according to halakha, that's good enough. So therefore, right, that's what they try to do in order to come up with a good compromise, right? On one hand, it's kosher, if a goy touches it, right, whatever, he picks it up, whatever, it's kosher, and also the taste is also good. So you got the best of all worlds, right? Both worlds. Okay, so anyway, right, but there are some kosher wines which are not pasteurized, so you got to be careful with those that you don't give it to a goy, to play with it because if he does, it may become non-kosher, right? You got to be careful with that. But just letting you know, right, that if the bottle is closed, right, there's no problem. It's only when the wine is open, and the goy like pours it out, that's only the problem there. But if it's closed bottle, there's no issue. Okay, so right, you can play with it all day if you want. Nothing is gonna change. Okay, good. So right, let's see what's going on here. So as we said, right, that according to Rabbi, it's shakol. Yerushalmi yesh yotzin b'mushal. But Yerushalmi says you can use that, right, for kiddush. There you go, right? So interesting, right, that Rav Hai didn't pass like the Yerushalmi. Okay. וקונדיטון, right? ואפילו אין לו אלא מזון בית סעודות, אם כרם ניקח יין לדלת כוסות, right? So, first of all, right, the Yerushalmi says you can use, as we said, right, pasteurized wine, and also you can use conditon, right? And conditon, if I'm not mistaken, it's like sweet wine, like, they add like honey to it, right? Whatever, right? Nowadays they add sugar, the same thing, right? It's all the same. So that's called conditon. Um, okay. So you can use those according to Yerushalmi, right? In other words, konditon is Manischewitz, basically. That's what you got. Okay. So, right, אפילו אין לו אלא מזון בית סעודות. So says the tour. Okay, let's read something else. Let's look in the Bet Yosef here. So says Bet Yosef, the Siman Reish Ein Bet, right? He brings the chapter that you're going to find that. Right? מתבאר שדעת רוב הפוסקים שמברכים עליו בורא פרי הגפן, right? So he says that in this chapter in Shulchan Aruch, over there, right, we wrote, he says that most poskim, not Shulchan Aruch, in the Bet Yosef. In the Bet Yosef, he wrote there that most poskim don't agree with Rav Hagon. So what does that mean? According to most poskim, the blessing for pasteurized wine is Bor Piyat Giffen, and also you can use it for Kiddush. So therefore, right, the rule is that we're lenient about that. We use it for Kiddush. And we also use it for the 4 cups as well. So basically, right, you can bring any of these things, whatever you want, right? Sweet wine, cooked wine, pasteurized, right? All that stuff is good. No problem.
Does it need to have like a kosher for Passover hechsher?
No, not really. Even though the Ashkenazim will tell you, right, their rabbis will tell you, yes, of course it needs, of course. Tell them, yeah, go back to sleep, sir. Even the Ashkenazim don't require that. Really, the truth is, but things have changed now. Everybody's into hechshers now. Whatever. It's like a whole thing. In the old days, by the way, they didn't have hechshers, and they did fine without it. So the hechsher is only like 50, 60 years old. This whole concept of hechshers. Before that, there was no hechshers in anything.
How can you know if the wine is kosher about that one?
It was made by a religious Jew, right?
Yeah, but
That's it.
Today you have to look for the hechsher, right?
I'm sorry?
But today we have to look for the hechsher.
Well, if it was made, let's say by your right cousin, who's a yeshiva student, right?
Nobody has the wine from their cousin that we buy from the store, yeah?
No, I'm just saying, right? If your cousin made it, right, and he's a yeshiva student, right? So you can use that, no problem. There's no hechsher on it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You know what I mean?
I understand, but I mean, anymore, the only way to know is to look for the hechsher, but we don't have to have
Yeah,
specific.
because the hechsher, what is it telling you? That it was made by religious Jews. That's what it means, right?
But but that doesn't need to specifically have for a Passover, kosher
No,
Passover.
for sure not. No, no, no. Because it's not the way to add, chametz to wine, right? Nobody adds chametz. Nobody puts flour in wine. No such a thing like that. They put sulfides, right? That's something else, which is like a preservative, I think, if I'm not mistaken. That they do put, but nobody puts flour into wine. So it's not really a problem. You can use any kosher wine. As I mentioned, like to my friends, I don't know if I told you guys, but like about 30 years ago, whatever, right? The Welch's company, right? That makes grape juice, well, Welch's, which is like a Goyish company. They used to have OU one day. They got OU, so they had a hechsher. Can you imagine? And then, all of a sudden, they lost the hechsher. So I was wondering, like what happened, so you know what happened, right? They stopped paying OU. That's why they lost the hechsher. But it's the same grape juice that it was, and then when they had an OU, it's the same thing. So I was just curious about this. I don't use it, but because I don't really buy grape juice much. But whatever, right? If I do, I buy Kedem, right? The usual stuff like everybody else. But right, whatever. But it's cheap also. It's not really expensive. So right, what do you call it? So I called up Welch's, the Welch's company. Called them up and spoke to like a representative there. Somebody, right? So I asked him. I said, "Sir, can I ask you a question? When you produce your grape juice, right? Does anybody touch physically, the wine, the juice?" So he told me, no, no, nobody touches it, right? It's all automated. You understand? So guess what that means, right? It's kosher, even without OU. Because the only problem is, when the guy actually touches the wine, physically with his hands. Otherwise, there's no problem. So the truth is, you can buy Welch's grape juice and use that. There's no issue with that. Uh, so he did tell me, by the way, something interesting. He said that the only time where there's human intervention there, in the process is, sometimes they have like a shovel, that they use to pick up the grapes and throw it into the cauldron, right? Whatever, that big, tub. So he says that's like human thing sometimes, that the humans, take a shovel and, throw, chuck the grapes into the cauldron, into the tub, right? But that's okay. You know why? Because when they're touching it, right, with the shovel, it's still grapes. It's not juice yet, so it's okay. There's no problem with that. So therefore, right, it's all good. But the problem is, with the wines, like you never know, with these small companies, that produce wines, you never know how they do it. I don't know how they do it. What am I going to do when I call every company, right, every wine seller, in the world, right, and ask them how they make their wine? How do I know, whatever. So, Welch's is like a very big producer, so it's more easy to ask them these kinds of questions. But I'm not going to now start calling, companies, right, and asking them what they do. But the truth is, that when it comes to production of wine and juices in general, nowadays it's very automated. There's not much human intervention going on there. So, that tells you something. Okay, good. So, right, let's see the Shulchan Aruch here. Right, so the Shulchan Aruch very short, right? Yotzin b'yain mevushal v'kom titon, right? So you can use pasteurized wine and also sweetened wine, right? You can use these things. No problem. So as we said, right, even though Rabbi Gaon doesn't allow you to use these things, but most of the poskim didn't agree with that. What is that? The Rif and the Rambam and the Rosh, right? As we said, they have no problem with that. So therefore, we're lenient about that, right? Especially here, when the whole thing is only rabbinical. So what does that mean? The 4 cups of wine, right? They're rabbinical on Passover. It's not from the Torah. So the only thing which we have is from the Torah is to eat the matzah, right? And also to read the Haggadah. That's from the Torah. But the rest of the mitzvot that we do on Passover are from the rabbis. So we're not so stringent, regarding those things as we are with the Torah mitzvot. But here, the truth is, even if it was something from the Torah, we could be lenient also in a case like this, But anyway, so that's the story there. So let's see what else we got here. Looks like there's one more. Okay, well, this one is very, very encouraging thing, whatever. Let's see. Let's just finish the tour first. So it says like this, right, in the tour, that ואפילו אין לו אלא מזון בית סעודות אם כרם לקח יין לדל כוסות. Look what it says, incredible, right? It says even if he has only enough food, right, for 2 meals, he says you should sell them and to buy wine for the 4 cups. Right? In other words, it's considered to be more important than the meals. Interesting. Even though then he has to go to charity, right? Go to the soup kitchen and get food from there, right? He's going to have to live on charity. But nevertheless, right, even if he has to fall into that trap of living on charity, he still should, make sure he has the 4 cups of wine. So it says, doesn't matter whether it's men or women, right? It's the same thing for both. They're both obligated. So also all the mitzvot that we do that night, right? Men and women are equal, right? No difference. כגון מצה ומרור, like מצה and maror, right? וגם התינוקות, טוב תיתן להם אחד. So it says also the children, good idea to give them kosol lefanav, right? Each one should have like a little cup, to train him in mitzvot. לפניו מצווה לחלק להם קליות ואגוזים כדי שיראו, שינו וישאלו. Right? It's also, right, there's a trick that we do, on the night of Passover, on the Seder, which is that, we give the children treats, this way it keeps them up, and it keeps them asking questions, makes them curious. Why are you treating, why are you spoiling me so much tonight? Giving me all kinds of treats. Right? So then they'll ask questions and they'll be curious. So we want them to be curious and ask questions. That's the whole thing, right? As we said, to pass on a tradition to the next generation. That's the whole idea. Okay, very good. So let's see the Bet Yosef. So it says Bet Yosef here, he brings the source for this. No, this is not the one. This one, yeah. So it says, right, where's the source? Beresh Perek Arbe Psachim, right over there in the Gemara. Tzadik Tet Amud Psachim. Tanan, we learned over there in the Mishnah, lo yifchatu lo be'arba kosot shel yain va'afilu yimina tamchoy u'mfaresh rabbeinu kemosh katav. So right, it says there that if the person if somebody's like running like a charity organization, right, and he's handing out products for Passover, right? A lot of people do this, by the way, in Israel. It's a big industry over there. They hand out, like everybody gets like their box, with the Passover foods, the products, all kinds of stuff. In Israel, it's a big thing because a lot of people are poor there and they can't afford to buy things, So they sponsor, they give them all kinds of things. Rich people sponsor it, and they give it to the poor, whatever, right? So it's a whole thing there, whole industry. So it says, right, that make sure to give them at least, 4 cups of wine, right? Because they need that. It's a very important thing. So what does that mean, right? You shouldn't think that just because they're on charity, right? They're living on charity, they can do with less than four. No, they have to have four. No less than that. Um, right? פרש רבינו כמו ורשב"ם פירש שאפילו הוא מתפרנס מתמחוי של צדקה, היינו עני שבעניים, אם לא נתנו לו גבאי צדקה, ימכור את מלבושו, ילווה או ישכיר את עצמו בשביל יין לבכוס. So the Rashbam goes even further, right? He's very stringent. He says, whatever you got to do, right? To sell your clothing, whatever, right? Or to borrow money or whatever, or right, to hire yourself out for some job, do some odd jobs in order that you have money for the four cups. So we see, right, this is a very crucial thing. We got to be really careful about this mitzvah, right? Because the rabbis were very stringent about it. והמורדכי פירש דמיירא שיש לו מזון שתי סעודות, ואמינן מי שיש לו שתי סעודות לא ייטול מן התמחוי. So the Mordechai says, right, what are we talking about? It's a person who has, enough food for 2 meals, right? So the rule is that he's not allowed to take from charity. ואם לא בשביל 4 כוסות, לא היה נזקק ליטול. So if it wasn't for the 4 cups, he wouldn't have to take from charity. מן התמחוי, right, from the soup kitchen, whatever, right, from the charity. ובשביל 4 כוסות כאמר. So, but for the 4 cups of wine, he should do it, right? Take from the charity. שיתנו לו גבאי צדקה, אפילו, they should give him, right, to the charity people, right, the soup kitchen, whatever, right, you want to call it, מן התמחוי. They should give him from the handouts there. לכן משמע בירושלמי, right? And also that's the way it implies in Yerushalmi. Okay, let's see Shulchan Aruch and we're done, right? There's still more, but we'll continue next time. B'ezrat Hashem. There's one more here. Okay, so let's see Shulchan Aruch here. So it says here, even if a person is poor, right, and he's living on charity, so it says, right, let him sell his clothing, or to borrow money, or to hire himself out, right, in order to have money for the 4 cups. So in other words, do what you can, right? You got to go the extra mile to make sure you got those 4 cups of wine for the night of the Seder. Okay, very good. So, I guess we'll stop there. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. B'ezrat Hashem. We'll see you tomorrow. Chazak u'baruch. Laila tov.
Kabbalah, thank you so much.
All the best. God bless.